All right, well, we are at the top of the hour. This is Masters of the List Formatting Universe, Advanced List Formatting. As you can see, we've taken Parker and redressed Parker to be in a variety of Masters of the Universe scenarios, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to cover advanced list formatting today for everyone to take advantage of some of those maybe hidden gem opportunities within list formatting that we might not know about or might not have been able to see yet. So we're excited to do that. My name is David Warner. I am a former, as of this week, MVP, current Microsoft employee. This is my first week, so excited to be part of that family. Big fan of the community, though. Tons of opportunities to collaborate. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out after this. That's my email as well as my Twitter handle. Let's connect and work on some stuff together in the community. Unable to do this session without my partner in crime is April Dunham.
Thank you, David. Yep, just like David, I work at Microsoft as well, leading the Power Platform advocacy team. I'm a big fan of the community, also former MVP, very active in the Power Addicts community for the Power Platform. Just as David said, don't hesitate to reach out to me after this. If you have any questions at all, there's my Twitter handle, my blog, and my YouTube channel. So lots of ways to reach out.
Thanks, April. Well, let's discuss what we're going to, or take a look at what we're going to discuss today. There's a lot of information we're going to cover, so we're going to move pretty rapidly with 40 minutes. We'll just cover some of those basics of out of the box list formatting as an overview, and then we're going to dive into form formatting because that's one of the newer opportunities on the block. And then we're going to dig directly into those advanced list formatting scenarios, dynamic filtering, integrating Power Automate, converting HTML to JSON. Maybe JSON has prevented you from getting a little bit more involved with list formatting, but you're comfortable with HTML. We'll show you a tool there, integrating Power Apps, and then how perhaps you want to develop in more of an IDE. VS Code is perfect for that, and there's a way for you to connect VS Code directly to your list formatting editor so that you can do it live and in living color. So what is list formatting if this is new for you? Well, it's the opportunity to adjust column formatting, view formatting, and form formatting. So column formatting is going to allow you to take your columns of rows and individually change each of them, right? So you're only going to adjust the column. View is the ability to take each row and change the entire row and how it looks. And then form formatting allows you to adjust that editing, that authoring experience. And so practically, what does that look like? We all know what a list looks like. There's a list with a couple of columns. There is column formatting where we've overrode the presentation layer, and that's important to remember. Even for advanced users, you're not changing the actual data within it. And then here is an example of view formatting where we're able to change the entire row. So we're going to jump, as I said, directly into demos, and we'll start with April on form formatting.
Awesome, thank you, David. Let me just get my screen share going here. So form formatting is one of the newest pieces of formatting that we can do here inside of the list formatting capabilities. So what can we do with this? A few main things. So if we take any of our SharePoint list or a Microsoft list in this case, so Mark just showed all the Microsoft list templates and everything. So what I'm using here is the Asset Management Microsoft list template. Now, if we look at this, we see if we click New, this is the form that we get. There's quite a few different fields that we have that we can control with this, right? So lots of scrolling involved to be able to fill out all the required metadata and columns for this particular list. So wouldn't it be cool if we could maybe tweak this a bit and maybe make it a multi-column layout? Maybe we want to add some headers to it. Maybe we want a footer. Maybe we want to break it out into sections so the user can logically see how to input information. Like lots we might want to do here. Now, traditionally, if we wanted to make these kind of customizations to our list forms, we might have to turn to something like Power Apps. So I'm a big fan of Power Apps, but for simple use cases where maybe we just want to do some conditional show hide, maybe add a header or a footer, we really shouldn't have to turn to Power Apps just for those very simple scenarios. We should use that for more complex formatting, right? So this new form formatting gives us a way to be able to make these simple customizations. So first thing that we'll look at actually is I want to go to a different list and show you a quick way to show and hide columns, because I think this is an important requirement that we have here. So I'm actually going to open up a separate list. We'll go into, let's see, I believe it is this list right here. So this list, we see we have country, state, and province. So if I click new on here, we have a country field and I can select two options, right? Canada or US. Now, if it's US, I need to fill out the state and let's just drop down. But if it's Canada, I need to fill out the province. Now, ideally, right, from a user standpoint, we wouldn't want both of these options to show. We would want state to show if we have US selected and province to show if we have Canada selected. This is a simple thing that we can use form formatting to accomplish. So what we can do is if we go into the new item tab, like we're creating a new item in this particular list, we see at the upper right-hand corner, we have this edit form option. And in here, one of the first options you'll see, in addition to be able to customize this with Power Apps, is edit columns. So this is just a simple entry point into the form formatting world, where we can see a list of the columns that we have in this list. And we can use this to show and hide. So if I didn't want to show like the Twitter profile, I can uncheck that. We can use this to rearrange as well. So we don't have to go into like the settings and list settings and go into that kind of classic view. This is a modern approach to being able to edit that. But the thing I want to show here as far as showing and hiding is if we select, say, this state field, you'll see we have three dots to the right of that. And one of the options that we have is edit conditional formula. So what this does is it gives us a way to put in an Excel-like expression, basically. So if you've ever in SharePoint did a calculated column, right? You know how you could do some kind of Excel-like expressions there to manipulate data, right? We can do a similar expression here in this box to be able to show and hide this particular column based on a condition. So what I'm going to do is we'll switch over to VS Code really quick, and we will open up. And I gotta find it real quick. I think it is right here, form formatting, there we go. So this simple condition. So all we're gonna say is if the country equals United States, we're gonna set the visibility of that particular column to true, otherwise set it to false. So I can copy that sample. I can go back, paste that in here, click save. Now you notice when I do that, it's grayed out. That lets me know that I do have a conditional formula applied to this. Now I can do the exact same thing and edit a conditional formula for the province, and we'll just change out this United States text to Canada. So if it's Canada, we want it to be true, otherwise false. Now if we save and we close out of this screen, and I'll just do a refresh just to make sure everything is kosher. Now if we go in to add a new item, you see I don't see state and I don't see province. So that tells me that my conditional formatting there is working. If I select the drop down here and choose Canada, I'm prompted to put in the province option. If I switch it back to United States, then the state field shows. So again, we don't have to turn to Power Apps anymore. Just do something as simple as this. If we need to show and hide different fields in our forms, we can take advantage of that. Now, the other thing, though, aside from that, is back to the asset manager list. What if we want to do some advanced customizations, like put a header or footer into this, or make this, like I said, a multi-column layout? We can use the other aspects of form formatting for that. So I'm going to go back here to our Visual Studio Code again, and we're going to look at some other samples. So this one is to customize the form body. This is a simple way to get started because all we need to do if we want to make a multi-column layout or maybe add in some section headers and group our columns that way is to use this sections tab. So we can add and define a section, give the section a display name. So I want to have a section called info, and that's where I want to store this set of fields. So I can choose the fields that I want to show and then just put in the display names of the columns in my list that I want to show in that section. So I have asset tag, manufacturer model, and they're going to have different sections as well for details, owners, and finally status. And I'm just defining the fields that I want to show in each of those sections. So if I were to copy this sample, let's just take a look at what this will look like and how we apply it. So back here in the new item mode of this particular list, we're going to go back into the upper right-hand corner and select our edit form option. But instead of selecting edit columns, we'll choose this configure layout. So this takes us into the form formatting screen. And all this is it gives a panel up here for us to paste in our JSON, which is what we're using to customize and override the styles of our form. So at the top, the important thing to choose here is where we want to apply this formatting to. So we have the three main options. So we can apply this to the header, to the footer, or to the body. In this case, the body is everything all where your fields are stored, so in the context of the form. So I want to apply this styling to the body to create a multi-column and tabbed kind of layout or section layout. So I'll paste my code into this text box and we'll save this. And now you see, as soon as I apply that, I didn't have to do a refresh or anything. Now I have this 3-column layout, and then I have these section headers for my form. So I have a nice, easy to see, way less scrolling than it was before to be able to fill out this information. So I see that all here. So we can take it another step further though. What if I wanted to have some kind of footer? So I can simply change this apply formatting to on the footer. Now, maybe if there's a question about this particular asset, I want to be able to direct someone to have a chat to the owner of the asset. That could be cool, just to have a little footer down here with a click here to chat with the asset owner. So if we go back to VS Code, we have this form footer section here where we can customize this. Now, this is a little bit more JSON where we're applying some styles here, but at the core of it, if you know HTML, we're just putting in a H tag or a tag here. We're going to actually call Microsoft Teams. So this is something that we can do using some shortcuts, right? We can pass in this call shortcut and then users equals, and we can put in someone's email address, right? So I could paste in the field of the owner of here, and then that would execute a Teams call. So if we copy this, we'll just see what this will look like here in the footer section of our form formatting. We'll save that. And now if we scroll down, we just get this simple clickable link that will go and launch a Teams call, right? Now the header, if we want to apply some formatting there, let's take a look at some of the things that we could do. So for the header, again, maybe I want to show visually what the status of this asset is. So that could be a really common request rather than having to scroll down, look at the drop-down box for what the status is. Maybe I want to have a color-coded status so I can know if this particular asset is available to check out or if it's being used right now. So I can use this sample to check what the status is. And based off of that, if it's available, I want the background color of my header to be green. Otherwise, if it's in use, I want it to be blue. And then finally, if it is reserved, yellow, and then in repair, red. So that's kind of how the color coding that I want to have go on there. And then just a few other things we're doing to, say, pull in the model number and the asset type to display that in the header, and as well as the manufacturer and serial number, and even the photo. So kind of lots going on here. Let's copy this, and we'll paste that back into the header section of our form formatting and click Save. And now this one, sometimes the header, you have to close out of it and then refresh to see that one. And the reason is this particular format doesn't show in the new section because I don't have any information filled in right now. So for the header, I'm trying to pull in information from my column. So I'm actually only going to apply this styling on the edits or the display form of this list. So if I were to select one of these items like this Clippy and go into the edit mode of this, now I should see my header. So there is the color coding that I have going on based off of the status. I'm pulling in the item asset. I have the image of the item, which in this case is an animated GIF, and I have the ability to email the manufacturer. So that kind of shows holistically all the different things that we can do here with our formatting. All right, and all of this is just JSON samples, which we can copy and paste. Again, so very simple and easy to use to get started there. Now I'm going to actually hand it back over to David so he can talk about some dynamic filtering that we can do.
Awesome, thanks, April. All right, so we're going to take it further, dive into those deeper areas as we had mentioned, and we're going to begin with dynamic filtering, just like April said. Now, it's important to note that lists are not just for where we see them here in the list view, right? Lists can be used on pages, and you may not know that there's an out-of-the-box list web part that can be utilized. Now, I've already dropped 2 list web parts on this page for expediency, and what I would like to do is I would like to click something in this list here, list web part on the left. Now, these are 2 different lists. One has a little more information that we see here on the right, and a little less information, just the Twitter, email, etc. on the left. What I'd like to do is I'd like to click here in this left one and see this right one react or filter. Well, we can do that. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to begin by editing the web part that I want to be reactive. And you know what, actually, I'll start with the left one here. This is the one that I want to click on. And we want to make it look a little better, right? There could be a little bit better experience here. And so I'm going to change this to a view that's going to have just the Twitter pic. And so we already saw an example of that. So this is just a view where I've assigned only the display of that column, and on that column, I have a column formatting to pull in the particular images associated with the Twitter account. So it makes it a little nicer to just click on the icons and the names and the faces there, as opposed to clicking on just a couple of columns. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see a better rendition of that on the right. So I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to change to a view here, and we'll call it contact card. And so now, oh, my images are a little messed up. Let's try. There we go. Must have just been a cache thing. Oh, something doesn't like there. Let's go to contributors Canada. And I'm going to turn on dynamic filtering right here. And what's going to happen is now it's going to say, well, what column do we want to filter in what part on the right? And we're gonna use Twitter. That's what the link is between them, is that Twitter handle. And then I'm going to look at the other web parts on the page. Now, it only is one, so that's the direct one to choose from. And I'm going to use Twitter as there. Those are the direct connections between them. And now I'm going to uncheck Chris, and I'm going to close. And this is a real quick demo. I'm just going to republish. And now I'm able to click on Seb, and we see it filters to Seb. Now, if I were to change this to another view, and I'm not sure why my contact card ones doesn't work, so let's go United States. And now we see a little bit more. I'll republish. And now I'm able to click on Chris. I'm able to click on April. And so now I'm able to use this as sort of a dynamic filtering mechanism to show or hide a variety of the list items here in my view format experience by using this format on the left. So a real quick and easy way to create a relationship between different lists that have common data in a way that is interactive for you and your users directly on a page. Real simple, took literally less than a minute to do that, and very, very simple to achieve. Now, let's go back to April and dive deeper into integrating Power Automate.
Thank you, David. And the thing with what David just showed too as well, just a little bit more information on what you can do with that. We can actually integrate that with Power Apps also. So a colleague of ours, Hugo Bernier, created this really cool Power Apps web part for SharePoint, which allows and supports dynamic filtering. So you could click on a list and actually have that pass those filters into a Power App. So that's out there and available to download as well. So just another quick tip of what we can do. Now let's talk Power Automate. So how can we integrate Power Automate inside of list formatting? This is one of my favorite use cases, and honestly, one of the first things that I did when I got started with list formatting is how can I integrate this to easily kick off a flow? So now with Power Automate, we all know that there's built-in integration with inside of Microsoft Lists and SharePoint Lists, right? So if we look at this event itinerary list, I know that there's this Automate tab right here where I can easily kick off some automations. So that's baked in. So you might be wondering, well, why do we really need list formatting? Well, if I want to do some kind of automation on this list, I have to click on the Automate tab. I have to first select an item, then I have to click Automate. Then I have to go and look through and click on the thing that I want to run, the flow that I want to run. Then it has to pop open a panel. So there's lots of clicks involved. So sometimes this might not be the ideal experience. So what list formatting enables us to do is kind of customize and reduce the amount of clicks that a user has to make to execute a flow. So what's the use case for this? Well, we have this event management application, basically this list, which is using the event itinerary template for Microsoft Lists, where we can put in different sessions. So I can see here is David's Master the List Formatting Universe session. Now, what if I want to send reminders that the session is coming up? So I have this field called reminder where, maybe the traditional way I would go into one of these items, I would manually email a reminder out to everyone that signed up, and then I might go into the reminder field and just update with sent, right? That's a tedious process. It'd be much better if we can leverage Power Automate to help us with this. So what I did behind the scenes is if we go to Power Automate and look at our flows, we have a simple event reminder flow. And so if we look at how this sets up, it's for the selected item of our event itinerary list. We're going to get the item details, and we're simply going to send an email out to the people that have registered for this, letting them know that there's a reminder for this event and how to join and all of that. Then we're going to go back, we're going to update that item and put the reminder text of sent in there so we know that we sent that reminder. Now list formatting here can help make this process easier. What if we could reuse this column that we have for reminder and make this a clickable button that says send reminder and then executes our flow? Well, we can do that with list formatting. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code again, we'll take a look at how we can integrate Power Automate. So the sample itself is very simple. It's only 31 lines here of code, JSON, that we have to do to be able to execute a flow. The main thing that you need to know, this sample is out there on the PNP repo. So the only thing that we need to do really is customize this section here. So we have these custom row actions that we can do when something is clicked in list formatting. So the action that we have that we can do is called execute flow. And the only thing we need to pass in is the GUID of the ID of the flow that you want to execute. So let me show you quickly how you would get that. So I'm going to go back into Power Automate. Now I have my flow open. So go into Power Automate, open the flow you want to execute, and this will need to be a flow, in this case, that is triggered for a selected item, right? Now, if you look here in the URL string, we have two different GUIDs. So we have this one here that says environments and then default. That's your environment GUID. You don't need that. You need this last GUID after flows /. So you're going to copy all of that that's after the flows and /. So that's the GUID that you're going to want to paste in into your JSON. So I've just copied that. We'll paste that in here into this bucket. And then the rest of what's going on here is I just want to change the styling of what's showing up in that column to say if we've sent the reminder, I want that to be in a green color. Otherwise, if we haven't sent the reminder, it should be in red. And then finally, I'm going to add in an icon just to make it even more cool looking. So we're going to have a check mark if we sent the reminder, and we're going to have a clock letting us know that we need to send a reminder if we haven't did that yet. And then we're just going to update the text. So it's going to say sent if the flow ran successfully, and then send reminder if it hasn't. So we'll copy this and we'll see how that changes our column here and how it works. So we'll go into the reminder, we'll go into column settings to apply this, and we'll go to format column. So here we're going to go into advanced mode on the bottom right-hand side or left-hand side there, and we'll replace what's in there with our JSON that we just copied. So now if we click save, we see that automatically my column gets updated. So now where I had that sent text in there already, it updates the styling. It's all in green. It has a check mark. I know that it's been sent. Now for the ones that haven't been sent though, like this master list formatting one, I have the option to make this a clickable link so now I can send the reminder. And that's going to pop open that panel to execute the flow on the right-hand side. So I just eliminated a minimum of 2 additional steps, right? I click one button. Now I go in here. All I have to do is say run flow. So we do have to do one more click to run the flow. Who knows? Maybe one day they'll eliminate that click with integration with list formatting. We'll see. But now my flow got kicked off. And if I update it here, if I kind of do a refresh, we can always check the status of our flow, just a reminder. So I can go into my event reminder flow. I can look at the run history here and see what's happening. So I do see 16 seconds ago that it did kick off. So I should have gotten an email if I do open up my Outlook just to show you that the process is working here. So there is my reminder that Power Automate kicked off for me with the information about that session. And if I refresh my list now, the column should have updated as well. So if we look at, let's scroll down, there we go. There is David's session, and now it's updated to sent. So simple integration that we can do with Power Automate to easily kick off a flow, reduce some clicks, and also update and make our columns look a little bit nicer based off the status of that. So let's turn it back over to David. So if maybe you're not familiar with JSON, but you know HTML or you have an HTML sample, what are some tools that we have to be able to help convert HTML to JSON?
Awesome. Thanks, April. Yeah. Now, we always talk about no code, low code, and really there's never such a thing as no code. But in list formatting, if you can copy and paste, then that's about as close to no code as you can get. That being said, you still might be more comfortable writing in HTML. It's a longer history and more people have comfort with it. Well, there is a tool that we can utilize called HTML to Formatter. HTML to Formatter, and we'll put this URL in the chat for you. And it allows you to literally just write simple HTML, and it will magically, and CSS by the way, it'll be magically converted into JSON for you. So what does the experience look like? We're gonna kind of go through the process of generating a column formatting so that we can come in, as we've seen, we're gonna take this Twitter column and we're going to have this created, pulling in an image, creating an alt tag, and all of the above that we can take advantage of. So we're going to start with some basic HTML, and it's always easy to kind of just start with the basics to make sure things are working. So what I've done is I just said, I just want to create an image. I'm pointing to a URL, and I would like to see what that looks like. And I always like to iterate through. So I'm going to click run right up here in the upper right. And what's going to happen is it's going to not only create the JSON for us, as we see here, that schema has automatically been created, creates that Elm type for us, or element type, and the URL. And we even see a preview of it. Now, you'll notice that I didn't include like anything that is dynamic. So if I were to copy this particular format and come over and paste it here, we know we've got multiple community contributors, but if I preview, well, everybody's Chris, right? Because I didn't set up a variable that's showing the current value. I mention that because sometimes it's easier just to work within a space where it's already definitive, because here, this has no context to your list. So if you were to put in something that was a little bit more dynamic, where it is looking for like the current user field, for example, I'll replace that, and we've got current field. So it's looking at the current field. That's the appropriate syntax so that it can be dynamic based on the field value. And I hit run. What happens is we get a broken image because it has no context to your list. So the way I usually start here is I just use hard-coded values and then replace those with the variables after the fact, which isn't too hard. You can do that pretty easily by searching and replacing. So I'm going to continue to kind of go through the process here. I'm going to include a little bit more, and what I've done is I've included some CSS right here directly in line. And what happens when I run that is you can see it's moved it around. So it's now you see it's moved it up, so it's actually covering some of my style. And that's because I'm doing positioning there. And then we want to take it even further. I'm going to add even more CSS. So I've created some divs here. I've added some border radiuses because we want to try to get it to be rounded, right? So I'm going to hit run, and now we see, okay, cool, things are looking a little bit more like we want them to look. In fact, if I add additional styles for like alt tags within my div, that can be done as well. Now, the alt tags usually are going to point to current field, so you want that field value, so they wouldn't work here, but they would work once you put them in. So now if I copy this and I go back and I replace this, again, we're going to see all Chris because I wasn't pointing at current user. But one more thing to take note is you'll notice there is the CSS box. You can put CSS in line here if you want, and it will automatically create it for you. As you can see, it's done that for us here. But if you're more comfortable just putting the CSS in as an item here in the CSS field, you can do that as well. So I could just take that and I could paste that in. I can paste that in here into the CSS, and you would do that with class names and the like. You would be able to include class names that you can associate to for this particular div, and it will construct it there as well. So what I'm going to do, again, just because we want to show you as much as possible and we're running short on time, I am going to take the final version of this. I'm going to paste it in. And what we have is we're now using the more current field. So this is dynamic. It's got the inline styles. It's got the alt tag, right? So we'll see that hover when the hover field, the tooltip, when we hover over it. And I'm going to hit run. Now, of course, we see that broken image here. That's to be expected because we're not able to call out to our list. But as soon as I take that over and I replace that in preview, now we see the dynamic images showing up based on the user field value that was there in the column. And if I hover over it, there you go, we see the actual value because it's now using that current value as part of our tooltip. So this HTML formatter is a great tool to be able to utilize and start using to kind of build and construct some of your JSON if you're more comfortable with HTML. It's really a great way to learn. It's a great way to start using list formatting in a practical and productive way. So we got more in store, and we're going to kick it back over to April on integrating Power Apps.
Awesome. Yeah, I use that HTML to formatter quite a bit, honestly. It's super helpful. All right, so we talked about integrating Power Automate. Now let's see how we can complete the Power Platform integration with lists with Power Platform, or sorry, with Power Apps. So Power Apps, this is another way that I use list formatting quite a bit. So I use SharePoint sometimes, Microsoft List for the data source for my Power Apps, right? So take this same event itinerary. I might use this to store the session information as kind of my back end, but I might not want to use it as the front end for the application, right? I might want to have, say, a different Power App if we open up the Power Apps application, like a Canvas app, which has kind of a nicer experience that's mobile, tablet friendly. So like this event scheduler Power App, where people can go, they can browse to different sessions that we have based off the days, and look at a session, click on it, get details about that, and maybe want to even allow them to RSVP for a session. So have that built in. So maybe it's something where you have SharePoint as your backend database, but you have additional functionality like this, My Schedule and RSVP type information. So how can we integrate this? So if we're using the SharePoint list as our backend, we can actually utilize column formatting in this case. So we have this session code field. I might repurpose this to be a hyperlink to open up my Power Apps application instead. Now, this isn't just a fancy hyperlink kind of sample. There's a little bit more going on behind the scenes as far as how we tie this into the Power App, because what I want to have happen is if I select the session code for this intro to Dataverse for Teams, I want that to go directly into this screen here. So the detail screen of my app, rather than the home screen, which is the session scheduler screen. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Now, first, let's see how we tie in this column and make it open up our Power App. So if we look at the sample that we have here, it's very simple. Again, 30 lines. All we are doing is making this a clickable link, and we're going to pass in the href, the tag for our Power App. So to get that, let me quickly go back and show you. So inside of Power Apps, you'll find the application. So we'll go into the Apps tab that you want to link to. And then we click on the three dots, and let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see. And then we'll go into the details. Now this right here, this web link, is what I want to copy and put in our formatting. So I'll copy this web link, and then we'll go back to the formatting sample, and we'll just simply paste that in here in the href bucket. Now the only additional thing I'm doing is, you see after that, I have this in quotes. Now I'm adding in a piece to that web link. So I'm doing an ampersand, and I'm putting in session ID. This is what's called a parameter. So I'm going to pass in this parameter of session ID into my Power App, and then in the Power App side of things, I can actually read this and dynamically navigate to the correct screen. So that's the parameter name, but I need to pass in a value to it as well. So I'm going to take the ID of the item that I'm clicking on and pass that in as a value of my session ID parameter. So I do that by doing a plus sign and then open and close brackets with a $sign, the name of the column that I want to pass in, which is the ID column. So that's really all we need to know for the sample. So I want to pass that in. I'm going to have the text open and up. So let's copy this sample. Let's go back to our list. And we'll go to the session code field where I want to apply it, click the drop down, go to column settings and format, go to advanced mode, and we'll paste that in there and click save. So now as soon as I do that, you see the colors change. So I know I have some styling, and I have this little icon that lets me know that I'm going to be opening this up. So if I scroll down to the list formatting session, what will happen is when I click on that link, rather than opening my SharePoint list, it'll open up a new tab. It'll open up my Power App and go directly to the details that we have about this particular session. So we just bypassed the SharePoint list altogether and took the users here. Now, the only thing we need to do from the Power App side of things to complete the circle of tying this all together is if we open up the application in edit mode, we'll go to the App tab in the upper right-hand corner. And there's two things we need to do. First, we're going to go to the App on Start, and we'll expand out our formula bar. And we're going to check to see, is there a parameter using this function called param called session ID? If so, we're actually going to look up in our SharePoint list the session that they selected. So we're going to set that in what's called a variable using the set function called selected session. We're going to look up in our event itinerary section here. We're going to do match on the ID. So we're going to say if ID equals whatever we passed in from our parameter, then look that up and set that as the value. Otherwise, we're just going to ignore that and not set that option there. Now, the last thing to tie this together, in the app section, if we click the drop down again, there's this start screen property. This is relatively new. So if you haven't seen this before, this is a recent change to how we switch screens dynamically on the loading of our Power Apps. So what we'll do is we'll again check to see if that parameter is blank or not. So if it's not blank, take me to the session details screen. But if it is blank, route me to the home landing screen of the session scheduler where people can browse the schedule. So simple as that from the Power Up side to dynamically pass in those parameters. We can do multiple parameters as well as we needed to in our use case, but that's the pattern that you'll follow, and then it will tie nicely together as we see from the Microsoft List standpoint. All right, and let's go back to David, I believe, for one more demo. Hopefully we have time for VS Code for JSON.
Yes, absolutely, and I will be quick. All right, so you may have experienced a lot of list formatting definitions that you've written and you're excited, but you may not be in love with the editing experience directly there within the browser window or kind of going back and forth. Well, there are some tools that we are going to show you that you're able to take advantage of. Now, the first one is called, it's a browser extension called SP Formatter. We'll give you some links here at the end, but essentially it is by Sergey Sergeev, another member of the PNP team, and it's a browser extension that you add into your browser, and it allows you to turn on and off a connection to SharePoint lists. Now, conversely, what you also are able to do is get the same SP Formatter, which is an extension in VS Code. So you just do a search on SP Formatter in VS Code or go to the Chrome Web Store. You'll need them both and you'll need to install them. And they are both free and heavily used. Now, the way it works is quite simply, you go to the list that you want to work in. So we're here back at our social profiles, and I would like to work in this particular list. I'll move over. We're kind of constrained for room here. All right, so I've got my Twitter feed here. I'll just go straight to advanced mode. And I've got a shortcut here up on my extensions bar, and I'm going to turn it on. So I'm going to say it's enabled, and now it says you may need to disable and re-enable this toggle if you're switching between columns or form layout. So I'm going to turn that on. Now it hasn't really worked for me yet, and the reason is because I'm going to come into my empty field here in list formatting, or excuse me, in VS Code on the right, and I'm going to start a new session. You can hit F1 to toggle the toolbar, and you could always just type SP Formatter if you want. Oh, not formatter. SP. Too dark there. There we go. And I can say start a new session. And that started. We can even see down here on the bottom, it says SP Formatter is listening. Now, if I come over to this page here and just refresh and go back into my format this column and go to advanced mode, now you see it's on, and it even tells me it's connected to VS Code. It tells me the exact same file that I'm connected to. And so I can actually start typing here, and I've got one that's already populated. So I'm going to just copy and paste that and go back to my empty one. And I'm going to paste in. Did I not copy that? Let me select all again, copy, paste, there we go. And you'll see that as soon as I did that, it auto updated and it even populated here, right? So I could easily continue to make changes to this if I wanted to and see how they look, see how things work. If I wanted to increase this to maybe say 55 pixels, you see as soon as I do that, it's getting bigger as soon as I type. Right, there we go. And it even updates here directly in the in the editor. So that's pretty cool because you're going to get a lot more IntelliSense. You're going to get a lot more feature functionality within VS Code. You can take advantage of all kinds of extensions that provide you more JSON schema awareness, IntelliSense, and the like. So it's pretty nice to have that experience and see them side by side. All right, well, that leaves us with just 1 minute left. We're going to share with you some list formatting resources. There is a collection of community-created samples that are available to you, well over 100 total samples of column and view formatting in the Patterns of Practice of the Microsoft 365 platform community. You can get to them using this AKA link right here. And we also have calls. April, tell us a little bit about the calls that occur.
Yeah, so we have a general development call that is bi-weekly on Thursdays at 9 Central, 10 Eastern. So in these calls, we highlight all kinds of stuff from list formatting to Power Platform as well. So we highlight some great Power Apps, Power Automate, Independent Publisher Connector samples, and then of course, lots of list formatting. Chris Kett is a regular contributor on the call as well, showing some cool list formatting demos. And those are all, if you can't make it live, available on the PNP YouTube channel, so you can catch the recordings.
Yeah, awesome. And we have a lot more showing up. Tetsia and others showing, Andre Laget has been showing amazing samples. So definitely join that. It's a great way to get involved. Here are some of the links to the items that we've shown: SP Formatter, HTML Formatter, and one that we didn't quite get to show was Flycon. That's the ability to use a bunch of icons that are already integrated, but you might not know all the proper keywords. So that's a fantastic tool to take advantage of as well. Well, feel free to rate the session. We'd love to hear what you think and let the Teams Nation team know that you enjoyed this session or what you feel could have been better. But we thank you for spending the time with us in this 40 minutes. And let us know if you have any questions. Again, feel free to reach out, even if it's after the fact, and we would love to collaborate.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much.